Recording in progress.
And we're off. Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Healthy conversation time. Today, because a few different people in various groups and clients and programming have been asking me about this question, maybe there's something in the energy in the air that's bringing it up for people. I'm going to revisit the topic of energy balance. One of my favorite topics to debunk, because as if the diet industry wasn't already so darn confusing, now there's this layering impact of messaging like calories in, calories out is untrue. You don't have to track anything, just do these things. I lost weight by eating a whole lot more, and you can too. Don't track anything, don't track calories, just do this instead. And what these marketing messages are really attempting to do is to sway you towards their way of doing things. That, side note, is their way of reducing calories and energy intake. So let me set the stage for you. And then your job is to become an expert at detecting whether or not someone else's way of doing things is right for you. Okay. So let me set the stage. I'm going to say this as clearly as I possibly can. There is no way around if you want to lose weight and if you want to lose body fat. You have to be in a calorie deficit, period. Let me try to be more clear about that, right? If I wasn't clear the first time, I'm going to try to be clear now. There is no way around. If you want to lose weight, you have to be in a calorie deficit. That's what people call energy balance. That's what calories in, calories out is. People call that CICO. That's calories in, calories out. That remains the gold standard in every peer-reviewed researched article that is legitimate. That foundational piece remains the same. There is not a way around it. If you want to lose weight, you have to be in an energy deficit, meaning you are burning more calories than you are taking in. Said a different way, likely you do need to eat less and move more, right? I chuckle sometimes when I hear the backlash at this sort of eat less, move more doesn't work. It actually does. What they're trying to say is it's not that simple. And they're correct about that. It is not that simple for a lot of people. Finding your way of consistently eating less in a way that feels good to you is often, oh, darn it, what's happening with my stuff here? Okay, finding the way that you can consistently eat less and move more can be difficult. And what is true is that there are certain physiological responses that make it difficult for you to eat less. There are certain emotional responses that make it difficult for you to eat less. There are certain nervous system responses that make it difficult for you to eat less. There are certain pieces of this that make it hard to eat. I call it eating an appropriate number of calories for your goals. That's what I call it. Now, where it gets confusing for most people is that they will hear taglines like, you don't have to count calories, you can just do this. I lost weight by eating more than I ever have. I just did this. Keto is the best way to lose weight, okay? The thing is, all of those things work. Or fasting, right? Intermittent fasting is a big thing too. Intermittent fasting is the best way to lose weight. All of those things work for some people, truly. And here's why they work. Because, for instance, I'll just take intermittent fasting. For people who love intermittent fasting, they love the structure of intermittent fasting as their personal way to consume an appropriate number of calories. They may not know that that's what they're doing, but when you shorten your feeding window, it eliminates the opportunity for you to eat calories over here. You're more likely to consume an appropriate number of calories because you've shortened your eating window. If intermittent fasting didn't work for you, it's because you were eating too much in your eating window. Same thing with keto, right? For keto, for some people, they love that that's the way that they can control their calorie intake. I am focusing on a certain macronutrient, mostly fat and a little bit of protein. I'm moving away from carbs. And that's the way that works for me to adequately get an appropriate number of calories for my body. I love just not eating carbs and eating a little bit of protein and focusing only on fat as the way to control my food intake. Awesome. Keto works for you, right? So there are three main ways that these different sort of diet approaches control for calories. Macronutrient, you can put them into kind of three different categories. Different types of macronutrients, different eating times, feeding times, right? This is fasting and eating windows. And then certain, how do I explain it? But like certain categories of food. So vegan or vegetarian or plant-based, right? So like the certain categories of food, the timing of food, and the macronutrients in food. Those are three different ways that you are controlling for calories in a way that feels good to you. And here's what I'm trying to say. Great, they're all awesome. Pick whichever way works for you, but make no mistake about it. The reason why these diets work is because you're controlling for calories. It is. And when people say, I tried to go keto and it didn't work for me, people who've heard my story will hear me say that. Like I tried to do keto a long time ago because my dad was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and I was doing keto along with him. It worked really well for him. He got off like most of his metformin medication and lost a bunch of weight, right? Yay, dad. That was the whole point. For me, it didn't work. I gained weight. Why? Because I gave it permission to eat all the cheese and butter and meat and sausage that I wanted. I was over consuming calories. It's not that keto is not a good diet. It just didn't work for me because I wasn't paying attention and I was overfeeding myself, right? Same thing with intermittent fasting. People love intermittent fasting, right? They love time feeding windows. Awesome. Then people will say, yeah, I tried intermittent fasting. It didn't work for me. You were overfeeding yourself somewhere. When you were in your eating window, you were eating too much. Okay, try a different approach. And here's what I'm saying. There are so many approaches to making sure you get only an appropriate number of calories for your goals. Meaning if weight loss is your goal, then you have to find a calorie deficit and stick to it consistently, period. You can do that with Whole30. You can do that with keto. You can do that being vegetarian. You can do that plant-based. You can do that macronutrient-based. You can do that by emphasizing protein. You can do that by counting calories. You can do that by intermittent fasting. There's a lot of ways you can do that, but please do not mistake your diet for being the magic pill for why this works. It's not. Now, going all the way back to the beginning of this video, when I said that calories in, calories out is not the whole equation, here's what I mean by that. There is research still being done about how different physiological responses, such as like inflammation or hormonal imbalances or cortisol or things like that, affect our food intake. There are some experts out there that would have you believe that it's the hormonal imbalance itself that is causing the weight gain. when you really, really dig into most of those. Now I'm really, I tread lightly here because the research is emerging and we need to understand more before we make blanket statements. So I'm not going to make a blanket statement, okay? But for the most part, what the research points to is that things like inflammation and cortisol and even certain hormonal imbalances trigger you to eat differently, different types of food, more food, etc. Trigger you to change your behaviors, read consuming too many calories. And that's why, right? Reducing inflammation and reducing cortisol and things like that are effective for weight loss. Now, people will say, you don't have to worry about your calories. You just need to reduce inflammation. You just need to reduce your cortisol. You just need to make sure you're not stressed. All are good things. We should reduce inflammation. We should make sure we're not stressed. We should reduce cortisol. But so far, what the research supports is that when we do those things, we tend to be able to eat differently, consume a deficit, and that's what allows us to lose weight. So when I say calories in, calories out isn't the whole equation, it's because of things like, for instance, PCOS is really difficult, right? There's a lot of inflammation in the body when someone is diagnosed with PCOS. And so a lot of times when people put people with PCOS on a very strict diet, it is contributing to the stress in the body, which is contributing to the inflammation and the cortisol in the body. And so they think that dieting doesn't work. And so we go this route of, you know, reducing inflammation and eating certain types of food that will not cause inflammation and certain types of food that will not cause a spike in cortisol. All of that is good. Because yes, we want to regulate the nervous system, we want to reduce the stress, we want to reduce inflammation, we want to reduce cortisol, but it still comes back to a calorie deficit, right? So when I say calories in, calories out isn't the whole story, what I'm trying to include is the components like inflammation or cortisol or hormonal imbalances, or maybe nutritional difficulties, right? Like maybe you're allergic to something or whatever that causes you to eat differently. Okay. And so then sometimes people will say, well, I just took a food sensitivity test and that's all I needed to do to lose weight. Well, if you have inflammation based on a food that doesn't agree with your body, it may be causing you to eat more or eat different types of food in a way that's not serving you. When you reduce that inflammation and take that food out, now you're eating less. So you're still coming back to a calorie deficit, okay? So what I always tell my folks after we've gone through a whole systematic overhaul of nervous system, belief systems and identity, vision, all this kind of stuff, we go through, I mean, shoot, we are in week 4 of the shift. We have 2 weeks left, 6 weeks before we even start talking about food, because there is so much that needs to be done first from a foundational level, and then we can start talking about food. So what I always tell people by the time we get to, week 7 through 9, yes, you can get hormone testing, you can get food sensitivity testing, you can do the fancy, expensive stuff if you want. But none of that will work for you if you don't have your way of being able to be in a calorie deficit consistently over time. None of it. And what it'll do is end up making you feel even more frustrated and more lost and more confused, because you're going, I just did this big overhaul thing and, got a new diet plan and it took out this macronutrient and and that didn't work for me. Well, you still cannot be in a calorie surplus and lose weight. It doesn't matter what protocol you're on. It doesn't work that way. So all you're doing when you are skipping over the tracking of calories is that you're finding another way to mitigate your food intake so that you're in a deficit. And I hope you hear me when I say, I am open for all the ways. Awesome. Whatever way feels good to you, fantastic. Find that way, do it consistently, and stick to it. But please do not get hoodwinked by the promises of you don't have to track, you can eat more. So when people ask me this all the time, what do people mean when they say I could eat more and I was still losing weight? Well, very likely those people were eating a certain type of diet, like maybe the standard American diet, and what they ended up doing was switching to a more nutrient dense whole foods diet. And when you eat a more nutrient dense whole foods diet, the volume of food that you are able to consume calorie for calorie is considerably more. So if you're eating, for instance, if you're eating 1,500 calories of junk food, it's not going to be a very much volume of food. If you're eating 1,500 calories of nutrient dense whole foods with, sweet potatoes and chicken breast and vegetables and, bone broths and oatmeal and blah, 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 there's probably a bigger volume of food that you are eating in comparison to what you were eating before. That doesn't mean you're eating more calories. And this is what happens for just the layperson who doesn't study this like a nerd all day long, right? Is they think, oh, I can actually eat 2,500 calories and lose weight when before I was eating 15. No, you can't. You've just changed your macronutrient levels or what type of food you're eating. So it seems like the volume is more as compared to the type of food that you were eating before. That's what people mean when they say, you can eat more food than you were before and still lose weight. Well, you have changed the makeup, the composition of your food. That's why it seems like you can eat more, right? But most people don't know to go all the way through with that level of detail, and it gets very confusing. And then they come to me and they say, every single time, if I had $1 for every single time a client said to me, Eliza, I have tried everything and nothing works for me. Yep, those are my people. Because it's confusing, because they get so much misinformation out there in the free marketplace. Anybody can say anything about food. Like anybody who has lost any amount of weight and figured out a way of tracking their food that worked for them can then go learn marketing skills and tell everybody, like, this is the way to lose weight. Do it like this. And here I can show you before and after picture because it worked for me. And maybe the 10 other people that I had do it with me. And I can show you that this works. And I'll say, like, awesome, that did work for you. But it might not work for Mary, who's like, yeah, I'm not super into intermittent fasting. Or it might not work for Joe, who's like, keto isn't for me, actually. Or it might not work for Susan, who is like, actually, I don't love tracking my food, right? Like you have to find, and that's part of what, I'm so passionate about, is teaching people what this stuff really means, both on the scientific level and on the energetic level and belief level, so that you can go find the thing that works for you and your personality type, the way that you like to structure your life, the things that you know about yourself. Like, am I a person who does better just shortening my eating window and then within that time frame eating, kind of whatever sounds good to me? Cool. Then we need to find intermittent fasting for you. Or am I a person who's like, ooh, actually, I don't even want to open a calorie tracking app. So I just want to make sure that I am staying away from carbohydrates and having minimal amount of protein. I'm just going to focus on healthy fats and fats that are good for my body. Amazing. Do that, right? But we cannot get sucked in by these blanket statements of this is the way to lose weight without tracking calories, because newsflash, calories in, calories out is still the foundation. You have to be in a calorie deficit, or anything that you try will end up not working for you, because someone has sold you a bill of goods saying, don't pay attention to that, just do this. You still have to monitor it. Okay. You tell I'm passionate about that? Yikes. Super passionate. Okay. Cool. Christine is into it. Glad you're here, Christine. Okay, if you have more questions about that and you're on the Facebook group, just DM me. If you're watching this on YouTube, just reach out to me on how would you reach out to me? I don't know, email, comments. I'm super easy to get a hold of. So if you have questions, let me know. You guys find me. You send me your questions all the time. So wherever it is that you send me questions, keep doing it. I'll see you next week.